You are listening to the Our View podcast, where we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. Every week, we bring you episodes that are centered around topics related to disabilities. As the host, it is my hope that you are not just inspired by these stories that are shared, but that you put some action behind your inspiration to do something that improves the lives of those who live with disabilities. I thank you, our loyal listeners, for your support and remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Our View for Life and to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts to tell us what you enjoy most about the podcast. Let's get into this conversation. I would like to welcome everyone back to another episode of the Our View podcast, where we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. And I am joined today by my guest, Cory Lee. So, Cory, thank you for joining me today and being open to sharing your story on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Art. I'm really excited to be here talking with you and all of your listeners. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You and I, we connected through Clubhouse originally, back in 2020, I guess it was, when everybody was kind of in the house and Clubhouse really, really picked up and was very popular. And we were in a lot of the disability focused rooms and topics related to disabilities. And um, then earlier this year, 2022, we had a chance to meet in person at the Abilities Expo in North Jersey, where where you were there with with your book, and we had a chance to talk and really meet and connect in person. So again, thank you for agreeing to do this. I'm happy to have you on today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, after we met you at Abilities Expo in New Jersey earlier this year, like you had such a magnetic personality, and you were so much fun to be around and hang out with. So as soon as you reached out about me being a guest on this podcast, I was like, of course I'll do it. Like
Yeah.
anything for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I have to admit that for those of you who may be seeing this on YouTube, I'm wearing an Eddie Bauer shirt, and I have become an Eddie
Oh,
Bauer
nice.
fan because of you.
Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. I love that brand so much. I mean, a lot of outdoor clothing brands tend to forget about people with disabilities, and
Yes.
their advertising and everything. And so Eddie Bauer is one of the very few brands that actually really embraces diversity and
Hmm.
chooses to make that a priority in their advertising and what they do. So as soon as they reached out to me about potentially being a partner, I was all in because I mean I've loved their clothes for years and their whole brand ethos is just incredible. So I could not be happier to be an Eddie Bauer brand ambassador. And I'm glad
Yeah.
that you would also. That's so good to hear.
Yeah, I'm a wheelchair user. I am ambulatory at times with leg braces and crutches, but whenever I see other wheelchair users, I'm always interested in, in their clothing, and like you said, finding clothing that is adaptable and able to fit comfortably. Because as a wheelchair user, we're sitting and things bunch up, and they're not long enough sometimes, and me using a manual wheelchair, like moving around and having my the chest area be large enough so that I'm not feeling too tight. So when I saw you were the ambassador for Eddie Bauer, I was like, oh, okay, let me check it out and see if I can find some things, and I found quite a few things. So
Awesome, good, awesome.
yeah. But that's a little side note, but we can get into this conversation now. And can you share with us who you are and tell us a few things about Cory Lee?
Yeah, so I am Cory Lee and I am 32 years old and I run a travel blog called Curb Free with Cory Lee. And so I started the blog back in 2013. And since then, I've visited 40 countries and all seven continents as a powered wheelchair user, and even became the first person to ever visit all seven continents in a powered wheelchair. So it's been a whirlwind of a journey for the past, I guess, almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years this December since I launched the blog. So a lot has happened in those 9 years. And then aside from the blog, I also have written a children's book. I do annual group trips where my followers can join me in different destinations every year. And I recently launched a nonprofit called the Curb Free Foundation. So we have a lot going on.
Yes, yes, and we are talking about all of those things. I'm so excited. I've like I said, we connected through social media, the Clubhouse app, um, back in 2020. So I've been following you and have been really excited about seeing all the places that you have visited. And as a wheelchair user myself, it's always good to see that things are, of course, there's a long way to go, but places are accessible and they are welcoming for those of us with disabilities and those who are wheelchair users. And again, I know it's not always easy traveling, but you make it look like so much fun. And, it's really encouraging to see that so many places are, open and more accessible these days, as more so than they have been in the past.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and as you mentioned, um, you have visited all seven continents as the first power wheelchair user. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Can you share with us when you became interested in traveling, and can you also share with us some of the, I guess, pluses and minuses, the great things and the challenges about being a wheelchair user who travels?
Yeah, I mean, I have always really loved traveling, and from a young age, I've traveled. I mean, mostly all domestically when I was younger. Really, my mom worked in a school while I was growing up, and so we would take the summers to kind of explore domestically here in the U.S. and take road trips to like Disney World or Washington D.C. or New York City, different places. And then when I was 15 we went internationally for the first time to the Bahamas, and it wasn't like super far away, but it was just on a cruise for a few days. But I thought during that trip at the age of 15, like if the Bahamas can be this close and easy to get to, and this different than the US with like different foods, a different culture, different people from all walks of life. I mean, I thought, if the Bahamas can be this different, then what would somewhere like India be like, or what would Australia be like, or Europe, or all of these other places around the world? And so that's where my travel bug, I think, was born, and it inspired me to travel further and keep seeing more. And so I eventually, when I graduated high school, went to Europe, to Germany for my high school graduation trip. And then for my college graduation trip, I was planning a trip to Australia. And I got online and noticed that there was not a lot of accessible travel information on the internet. And so there were only a couple websites out there in 2013 that specialized in accessible travel. And so that really motivated me to like create the website and do something about that and hopefully get more accessible travel information on the internet. And so that's where the idea for Curb Free with Cory Lee was born. And I think that, as you said, Art, accessibility is constantly improving, I believe. So there are more and more destinations now that are really, catering to travelers with disabilities more so than ever before. So even, 5 years ago, it would have been impossible, literally, for me to go to India. There was zero accessible transportation within the country of India. But back in 2018, they launched the first ever tour company for people with disabilities. So they finally now have a van that like has a lift on it. And as soon as I heard that news, like the next day, I booked my trip to India and was so excited to go. So I think that's just like one example that shows, that while, your dream destination may not be as accessible as you need it to be now, like who knows what the future holds and what it could be like 5 years from now. So I have a lot of hope that we will see a much more accessible world in the near future, and every destination will eventually be accessible.
Yes, I totally agree. I'm holding on to that hope with you, and it's traveling is just so much fun, and it's one of the things I've missed most the last few years, not being able to travel too much. I've been a few places. I went to Disney last year for
Oh, nice.
my yeah for I turned 40 last year, so my mom and I we went to Disney and met some friends there for a couple of days. And you mentioned a cruise, and I'm talking about Disney. I saw your post a few months ago, I guess, maybe when you went on the Disney cruise.
Yeah. I
And
went on
it,
the Disney Dream, and it was a lot of fun. I've already got another one planned for this February, so
oh, great.
yeah, you should come on it. We
I
could
have,
hang
I have
out.
friends going in February. When are you going?
On the February 27th cruise on
Ah,
the Wish, on the new Disney Wish ship.
yeah, they're going earlier in February. And
Oh, okay.
it's funny. I wasn't able to go on the cruise, but I was planning on meeting them at Disney after they're staying for a few more days to go to the parks. So
Nice.
so I might be doing that, but that's earlier in the month. But the
But
accessible rooms,
Disney's just the best. I'm
yeah.
obsessed with Disney. I've gone like every year for my entire life. I did my college internship at Disney World,
Oh
so
wow.
I'm a little bit obsessed with it.
Yeah. Yeah, the accessible rooms on that cruise ship were like it was amazing to see
Oh yeah.
what it looked like. So Um, yeah, I just when you said cruise ship, I was like, oh yes, I have to mention the, the Disney the
Yeah,
Disney
definitely.
cruise. But so you and I, like we said, we met at the Abilities Expo earlier this year when it came to New Jersey, and you were giving away your children's book called "Let's Explore with Cor Cor." And can you share with us what inspired you to write the book, and just a little bit about tell us what the book is about?
Yeah, so my mom and I co-wrote the book together a little before the pandemic, but we finished it during 2020 and the height of the pandemic and released it July of 2020. And so the book is all about this kid in a wheelchair. His name is Cor Cor, and he travels the world as a wheelchair user. And so he visits places like Iceland, he goes to Australia, he goes to London. And so hopefully when kids read the book, they, not only see someone in a wheelchair that is, having this awesome life and like traveling the world, but they also get to learn about some really incredible destinations around the world. And so all of the destinations that are featured in the book are ones that I've actually been to. So they are wheelchair friendly for people to go to. If you use a wheelchair, all of those destinations are completely possible to visit. But my mom and I wanted to do this book and publish it because, I mean, growing up, I can remember there was only one children's book that I remember and had a character that used a wheelchair. And so, I thought, there needs to be more representation in the in children's books. And so we decided to start writing the book a few years ago and then decided to get like serious about it at the start of the pandemic and hired an illustrator, one of our friends, Emmanuel Moore. He did a terrific job with the illustrations in the book, and we published it in summer of 2020. So it's been amazing just to like see all of the kids, both with disabilities and without, and how they've really embraced the book and grown to love Cor Cor as a character.
Yeah, I shared with you before we started recording that I gave one of the books to one of my best friend's sons. He's two now, but he was just under 2 years old at the time, and I went to their house right after I had got the book from you that same day, and I was just in my car, and he saw me, and I've been to their house, like he knows who I am and everything, but he just wasn't, he wasn't really feeling me that day, and he just kind of kept his distance until I brought the book out.
I love
I
that.
showed him the book, and he comes rushing over to the car like to get the book. He's like, "Oh yeah," like
Oh, good.
he loves books. And then I had went over there after that, a few weeks after maybe, and he went and he got the book and he brought it to me, like as if he almost remembered that that I was the one that gave it to him. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yes, yeah. So it's really cool, and I truly believe, as I mentioned when I start all of my episodes, that um, my mission here with Our View is to change the tone of conversation about disabilities, and I really believe like that's how we do it, by putting our stories out there and putting books out there. Like that is a great way to reach, to reach all people of all age ranges, and especially children, to make it something normal, to make it something that's not strange to them to see someone in a wheelchair, or and especially with your with the topic of your book of traveling, to make it
Yeah,
known that
yeah.
people with disabilities like to travel. We like doing things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I
uh,
really wanted to just show, an active wheelchair user that's
mhm,
leading like this really amazing life and traveling the globe. And I think that, with children, if they see, a character that they love and read about that uses a wheelchair when they're young, then hopefully as they grow up, when they see a wheelchair in the real world, they won't be like, staring us down or like
mhm.
trying to avoid us or being scared of the wheelchair that we use. And so, yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, I mean, hopefully they're influenced just to better understand that people with disabilities are just people, just like normal people living like they are.
Absolutely. I've said it before on the podcast that I love that my friends have me around their children to see my crutches, to see my wheelchair. So, as you said, when they grow up and when they start school, it's not a big deal to them. If somebody in their class or somebody in their school has a wheelchair or crutches, they could just
Right.
say, oh, I know somebody with crutches. It comes over to my house all the time.
Right.
So it's not, it's not a shock to them. And that then hopefully they can also help their other classmates, their other friends realize that, there's nothing to be scared of, and it's okay to talk to us, and things like that. So again, I really really am happy that you did put the book out, and it is definitely making a change for sure. So
Yeah, thank you
congratulations
so
on
much.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yes. So the next topic, I was really excited to see recently that you started the Curb Free Foundation. So can you tell us what that foundation is, and can you tell us about the vision and the mission of the foundation, which is, like I said, I was so happy to see that you started this, and I'm excited for you to talk about it.
Yeah, so I mean, I am luckily able to travel a lot. I travel about 4 to 5 months out of the year, but most of that is through things like partnerships with destinations and different things like that. So very, very often, my followers and blog readers will comment and say something like, I would really love to go to Spain, but there's no way I could ever afford a trip like that. And traveling as a wheelchair user, it is a lot more costly than, someone that's able-bodied because we need accessible transportation, which often costs more, and accessible excursions often cost more, and tours and accessible hotel rooms are often more. So there's a lot of costs that go into that make it really difficult for someone that uses a wheelchair to be able to afford to travel. And so for years, I have had the idea to start the foundation. And then I recently decided, I just got to like finally do it. I got to like bite the bullet and just go for it. And so I launched the Curb Free Foundation this past February. And so with the foundation, we give out travel grants to wheelchair users that want to go somewhere for their dream trip. So on the website, at thecurbfreefoundation.com. You can fill out the application if you're a wheelchair user and let us know where you would want to travel to, what's your dream destination. And then we will go through the applications. As we get funding, we are a nonprofit, so constantly trying to raise funding to be able to give people these dream trips. But we then pick a couple winners and send the people on their dream trip. And so we recently awarded the first two winners or grant recipients from the Curb Free Foundation. So one is going to be going to Disney World on her dream trip,
Yay.
and the other one is going to be going on a Caribbean cruise. And so their stories were just super inspiring and motivating. And I cried my eyes out like while reading all the applications because it's just like overwhelming to know that, there are so many people out there that want to travel if, they have the means to be able to do that. And so just seeing all of the applications, I mean, we received over 200 applications within
Wow.
24 hours of
Wow.
launching the foundation. And so the demand is definitely there, and people have been applying, which is incredible. So we gave out the two trips so far, but we're definitely looking forward to giving out many, many more travel grants over the coming years.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great that you had so many applicants so fast.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely overwhelming. I mean, I expected there to be like quite a few, but
Hmm.
for there to be like over 200 within one day, it was just like completely mind blowing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I as I shared with you, I was planning a trip to Disney for February of 2023. Um, and then as a wheelchair user, we have to get new wheelchairs every now and again. So then I found out that the insurance company would not pay for a new wheelchair.
Oh,
So that means that I have to pay for a new wheelchair. And it was like, okay, but I'm supposed to go to Disney.
right.
But then it's like, okay, this is, and it's just like, an expense that somebody else would have if their car were to break down or something like that. It's like plans change. But it's like you think as a wheelchair user who needs a wheelchair that your insurance company would pay for it. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So, I have to put out the money for a new wheelchair, which is, it's okay. Everything's fine. Um, but it's just, as you said, thinking about the expense of taking a trip and the extra cost that it would, be for me to take a trip as a wheelchair user. It's like, okay, I can't do both now.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So you do have to make those decisions at certain times. But it's really just it's great that you're providing this opportunity. And as you said, with having such a great response so fast, you see that the need is there, the desire is there for, people with disabilities, wheelchair users to want to travel. It's like we do want to be out here. We want to, do things, and we like doing things, and so you providing that opportunity for them is a really, really great thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I one of the people that we gave the first travel grant to, she is, I think, 40 years old, and she has dreamed of going to Disney World for her entire life, but she just really, her family could not afford it as she was growing up, and she still was unable to go on her own. And so, as an adult, that her dream, she said, has always been to just like see Cinderella's castle and eat at Be Our Guest at Magic Kingdom and have all of those experiences that I've like really taken for granted, I think, for most of my life because I've been to Disney so many times that
Hmm.
it's just like second nature almost. But then to read, her application, and we interviewed her over Zoom, and we're able to meet like face to face over Zoom. And so really hearing her story was like so incredible. And it just like put things into perspective for me in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, it really does. And just hearing different stories, like you said, I'm sure it was very overwhelming and very emotional to read so many stories.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was definitely
Yeah.
very, very difficult to choose like who we were gonna give the first two travel grants to, but it was a long process of going through every single application. And we had an advisory board of five people that went through them, and
Hmm.
we all eventually narrowed it down to those two. So it was a long process, though, but definitely worthwhile.
Yeah. Yes, very rewarding, I'm sure, for you as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, my last question to wrap up our conversation, as you mentioned, you've been to 7 continents and over 40 countries. What city or country outside of the United States did you find to be most wheelchair accessible, and or which one did you find to just be the most fun overall in general?
So I'll give you a couple. couple.
Yes.
I would say the most accessible city that I've probably been to outside of the US, and maybe even like including the US, maybe the most accessible city in the world is Barcelona, Spain. I loved it. I was able to go back in, I think it was in 2018. And I mean, every like mode of transportation to get around the city was accessible. A lot of the attractions were really, really great. And then the beaches in Barcelona were the most accessible that I've ever seen. So they had amphibious beach wheelchairs that could roll on the
Oh.
sand or get in the water. And they even had attendants at the beach, like people that would help you transfer from your wheelchair into the beach chair. And so they had a Hoyer lift that you could transfer with. They had accessible changing rooms. And it was just like, I mean, it was so inclusive and unlike any other beach that I've seen. And so I was incredibly impressed and loved Barcelona for that reason. And also the food is amazing in Spain. Like you can eat all of the churros and paella that like you can handle. So I mean, it really can't get any better. And then I would say the most fun trip though that I really enjoyed. I mean, I love Barcelona, like it was super fun, but I think the most memorable trip for me was probably to Morocco. And that was where I had the first ever curb-free group trip. And so we went there with some of my followers joined me in Morocco for a week, and we were able to explore cities like Marrakesh and Casablanca and Fez. And then I went out into the Sahara Desert and actually rode a camel and like stayed in a tent overnight in the Sahara Desert. And
Oh,
so it was like,
wow.
I mean, Morocco's not even somewhere that I had like dreamed of visiting for a long
Hmm.
time, but it surpassed my expectations in like every way possible. And so I completely fell in love with that country and would love to go back and do it all again. So, and there's a really great company there called Morocco Accessible Travel Consultants, and they do accessible group tours in Morocco. So they have the accessible transportation, and they arrange all of like the accessible hotels and activities and all of that good stuff. So they're a really, really good company. So I would say that's like probably the most memorable trip, and then Barcelona is the most accessible.
Cool. That's so cool. So you've mentioned that you've taken the group trips with some of your followers. Do you have any of those trips planned for the future, coming up
Yeah,
soon?
yeah, so actually in 2 days, we're going on the 2022 Curb Free group trip to Patagonia in Chile. And so we'll be there for about 10 days, and I'm so excited for that. And then we recently announced the 2023 tour, which is going to be starting in June of 2023. And we are actually going to Barcelona on that tour. So it's going to be completely accessible. So if anybody would like to join and you have a disability, feel free to reach out, and I would love to have you with us.
Awesome. And before we wrap up, can you please share with us where people can find you on social media and give the name of your foundation again, how they can donate, and all of that information, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is curbfreewithcorylee.com, and I'm also on Instagram at curbfreecorylee. So feel free to DM me if you have any questions or interest in joining the group tour for next year to Barcelona, Spain. And then also the foundation is the curbfreefoundation.com. And if you are a wheelchair user and are interested in going on a dream trip of yours, then you can fill out the application there on the website, or we are also always looking for donations to be able to fund those dream trips. So you can also donate on the website as well. And lastly, my children's book is called Let's Explore with Cor Cor, and it is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all those places online.
Great. Corey, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to um, speak with me and to share your story and all of the great things that you're doing to um, change the world of travel for those of us with disabilities. It is really very exciting to see, and really grateful that our paths have crossed and to know you. So thank you for this time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Art. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully I can see you again in person soon.
Yes, absolutely. But you
Uh,
take care.
Thank you.
This concludes this episode of the Our View podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on all social media platforms at Our View for Life. That's OurView, the number 4, LIFE. If you have a topic or a person, or if you are a person who would like to be interviewed for an upcoming episode of the podcast, send us a DM on Instagram, send us a message on Facebook, or you can email me at ourviewforlife@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.